Good morning, Dilip, and good morning to friends from Navrachana University and outside who are watching this both on Zoom as well as on YouTube. This program is being streamed live on YouTube as well. And this is the first conversation series which we are starting. All along we've had several webinars, but then we are also now having a series of conversations with reputed people who will explain to us about various things. So it's a conversation medium, and this is the first lecture, first session of the conversation series of Navrachana University. We're very delighted today to have with us Mr. Dilip D'Souza. Dilip actually hardly needs an introduction. He is an electrical engineer, electrical and electronics engineer from BITS Pilani, and my senior by 2 years. We were in the same hostel also for a brief while. And, Triple E in those days was one of the most wanted kind of courses. And BITS structure and the BITS system was such that you had to consistently fight for whatever you perform, basically. If you wanted if you wanted the program of your choice, every single semester was a screening. And, Triple E was what we call Triple E was where the toppers would go. Triple E and mech of those days, mechanical. So Dilip has done Triple E from BITS Pilani, 1976 to 81 batch. And then he went to the United States to do his MS in computer science from Brown University. After a computer science degree, he then joined the IT industry in the United States, spent many years in the United States, and worked with companies like Texas Instruments. And TI, as you know, is one of the world's topmost companies. They pioneered the chip, the IC chip, that goes into all these computer hardware design. So he was in that company. And then he worked for many years in other companies, also in the US, came back to India, joined a software company, again worked for some 7-8 years there. Then the writing bug bit him, and he decided that, okay, let's start writing. But that's what we will be discussing today. You will notice that his writing is, is about true stories, several true stories that he's come out with whether it's books or articles. They are actual, so, true story, you have to do a lot of research. It's not imagination only. So we'll talk about that. He's also now into science journalism. He has a column in Mint where he writes regularly on science journalism because his passion is to popularize science and mathematics in particular to school children, to senior citizens. The beauty of mathematics and the beauty of science and the connection with nature. So that's what we'll be talking today. Thank you so much for accepting our invitation today, Dilip. We appreciate it.
Thank you, Nilay. Thanks for that. You said I don't need an introduction, but you gave me such a generous one that I think I'm going to hire you as my PR consultant. So, but anyway, no, thank you so much. Really a pleasure. Yeah.
All right. Okay. See, Dilip, I just want to know, can you tell us about, the kind of, you have made such a transition from moving from pure computer science, hardcore technical stuff, to journalism, which is the creative side, which is writing seemingly unrelated things. So what is it in, when we joined BITS, we were around 17 or 18 years old. What was it in our education there? Not only the syllabus, the curriculum, but several things outside of that, whether it's a hostel life or campus life. And, what made you, what made it possible for you to become the kind of interdisciplinary and be able to move across boxes?
I think, well, let me start by saying that a lot of us who went to BITS, like it or not, some of us didn't get into IIT. That's like me. But I honestly think, and it's one of the great strengths of BITS Pilani is that I'm glad I didn't get into IIT and I went to BITS because, as you say, it had this interdisciplinary character to it. And I mean that in different ways. You could take different subjects and you were encouraged to take different subjects, and not just your hardcore engineering. You could take humanities, economics, management, English, library science, all kinds of things. You could do courses here and there that as part of the course. But what I also felt, and I don't know if BITS is unique in this respect, but to me it was a big eye opener. I felt like I got to BITS and I met people of every kind. You know, I was from Bombay, this urban guy. I thought I was the cat's whiskers when I came to BITS, but it was a really good introduction to the rest of India and to people of every kind who thought differently, who were from completely different backgrounds, who spoke different languages. And I think that's also part of this interdisciplinary aspect that you mentioned. That there's not just the subjects, but it's opening your mind in different ways. And I truly feel like that. I mean, it's true. It's now after all these years that I look back and I reflect on it and I see it that way. But it's true. It really opened my mind in different ways, and I think that helps people like us who've come out of BITS to adjust to a different to do different things and perhaps that helped me, as you say, change my line. Well, let's talk a bit more about that, but carry on. Now back to you.
Yeah. In fact, this is one of the very interesting parts that we all found in our education there. And this is what we are doing in our university also. It'll be of interest for you, Navrachana, for Dilip, for you and the audience from outside to know that our basic philosophy is interdisciplinary approach. So we do have tried to see that students think outside their silos, outside the box. And there are several innovations which we are doing, including social innovation projects, which are highly interdisciplinary in nature. Okay. So we are trying to break these silos and yet have our students perform with a social conscience.
Good.
So yeah.
Glad to hear that.
Yeah. Okay. Can you tell us about your experience in the US when you studied MS? You know, it was a completely different ocean, right? Way back in '81, the India of those days and US there, I mean, and the education system there. I mean, what did you learn in Brown University apart from computer science field?
Okay, well, so I went to Brown for a computer science degree. It was, I was actually telling you this yesterday, interestingly enough, it was a very young department. It was just 2 years older than it. It was an offshoot of the applied maths department. I was the first Indian graduate student there, and the sidelight of that is that the next two Indian grad students they had were also called Dilip. So they must have wondered what's going on. But
Okay.
apart from that, it was a young department full of very energetic professors. And Brown is a really top-notch university that I found. And again, with no disrespect to my BITS classmates, some of these undergraduates that I met at Brown were the sharpest guys I've ever met anywhere. You know, they were on the ball like that. And I was, as a graduate student, I was having to teach them and I was thinking, man, I'm teaching these people who know more than me about programming, and whom I'm asking advice for on my own assignments. And here I am trying to teach them something. So that was also a revelation in a lot of ways. But you know, that's part of the game in a way. And you learn to stack up against your peers, and it's not just competition, but you learn to kind of work with them. So it was a great experience for me in a lot of ways there at Brown. And then, you know, I worked in the US for another 8 years in software in Texas, first with Texas Instruments, as you said, and some other places. And
so you were into hardcore computer science in Texas Instruments.
I was writing software. You know, initially I was hired to write software in Lisp, the language called Lisp. So I love that language. And then I was also a lot of C and C++ programming, but a lot of Lisp really. And it was really hardcore software. And you mentioned the word creative a little while ago, and I want to say that actually I believe writing software is just as creative in a business as any other kind of writing. And you know, really good computer scientists aspire to have their software called, the word is always elegant. If it's called elegant, then you know you've reached the top of the mountain. And so you know, 1 or 2 times my software got called elegant, and I know I felt like I'd achieved something. So it's the same thing, you know. It is a creative process, and in some ways I feel like that helped me in the kind of writing I do now.
True. I remember when I was a student of MBA, you know, we had descriptive subjects, you know, humanities kind of subjects. And my training also in BITS was elegant, as you said, to be elegant in everything, whether it's programming or, you know, being very elegant, concise, precise, talking less but delivering more in that short program that you're giving. And so my answers would be short, factual, correct, but short. And whereas the other guys who had studied in from other streams, they would write very verbose things. And there was always the issue that, our training has taught us to be short and sweet and elegant and precise in our communication. So that's one thing which I've seen. I agree about elegance. Okay. And, when you came back, you also joined a software company here in India, right? In Bombay. And what were you working on there? Application software or?
Yeah, it was actually, so in Bombay, when I came back, I didn't have a job, and I just came back because I knew I wanted to be back in India. I'd been in the US for 10 years. I just wanted to come back. So actually, there's an old colleague and friend of my father's called Shirish Patel. I owe a lot to him. The Renaissance man in a lot of ways. He was a very well-known structural engineer here in Bombay. If you know the Kemp's Corner flyover, that was the first flyover in India which he built. So anyway, he was a colleague of my father on the old New Bombay project, and I grew up calling him Shirish uncle. So when I came back, Shirish said, come and work for me. I have a small software wing. I can't pay you much, but I jumped at it because I didn't care about the payment, but I cared about working for him because he was such an interesting man. So I went there and we worked on different kinds. The first bit of software we did was to do, he had some friend in the travel industry. So he wanted to do, to prepare air tickets because there's a particular way that it's a particular rules that apply. So if you type in an itinerary, you want to get your ticket prepared. So we prepared a small piece of software for that. Then we did some software for the civil engineering business for tendering and different kinds of things. But as I was doing that, we were writing all this code, and I was enjoying it. Shirish and I and a couple of others were doing this in this small software wing. But I started writing on the side, and I told Shirish, look, I'm enjoying the writing a little bit more than I'm enjoying the software. And he said, no, just do it. That's the kind of guy he was. And then eventually I found that I wanted to do the writing full time. But even then, after it had been some years that I'd been doing it most of the time, even at his job, and he didn't mind that. So that's how I came to my writing through the software.
Okay. Now then, after that, you started writing, right? The writing bug bit you, and you started writing. Tell us about that experience. Your first writing that you did. Was it, the elegance thing that would come to our mind? Was it short, sweet? How did you write? How did you observe and start writing things around you?
I should make a confession. The first article that I had published was actually a light humor piece, which I got some newspaper to publish, but they were so unsure that people would like it that they actually put a label in the middle saying humor, so that people would read it and say, "Aha, we better laugh at this." So, but then it was you get published once and it's like a kick, and you want to get published again. So I wrote again. So it went from there, and then somebody gave me a column in the old Sunday Observer, so I wrote for them for some years. And then there was a rediff.com. I started writing for them, and by then I was getting interested in political and social issues. I wrote a lot about those things. And it went from there on and on. You start getting into it in one aspect, and the road widens, and you find other things that are interesting that you want to write about. And so then my first book came out of some of that writing, and went from there. I found I liked writing about mathematics. So I used to write at that time, back in the 90s. I wrote a number of columns, but then that stopped. But then about 8 or 10 years ago, Mint suddenly asked me, do you want to start writing that math column again? And that's what I'm doing now. So different kinds of writing. And I did a lot of travel writing, and I still like to think I like to do a travel writing. For a couple of years, I did a sports column commenting on different kinds of sports. All these things, you start writing, it's like an ocean, it's just like reading. You find that you do something, and suddenly you want to do this other kind of writing. You suddenly want to do that other kind of writing. And somehow in your mind, they're all connected in some strange way. And to me, it really seems that way. And in fact, it also seems connected to my computer science background. I like to feel like that what computer science teaches you, to be logical and to be concise, as you talked about, to get to the heart of the matter, all those things, I like to think they apply in my writing, and I like to think I apply them in my writing. So, maybe my readers need to tell me if I actually achieve it, but that's my aim, and that's where I feel my computer science has helped me in my writing. Yeah.
Very nice, very interesting. The way you connect the dots together.
Yeah, well, there are a lot of dots. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. Now let's move on to this because a lot of people are very interested in knowing about Swadesh as such. I too saw the movie, as Mr. Basu said. He saw it. I saw it twice. I found it very nice and very interesting. And just tell us about the story. It's a true story. In fact, those of you in the audience who have seen Swadesh, you would be knowing that in the movie there is a credit title, where Dilip is acknowledged by the director Ashutosh Gawarikar. So you tell us about this story, Swadesh. I mean, how did you write the story? How did you research the story? And then how did it become a film?
Okay, so before I knew anything about the film, I mean, nothing, I didn't even know who Ashutosh Gawarikar was, but I was interested in this whole Narmada Dam issue, which, is not something, I guess, to bring up very loudly in Gujarat, but anyway, I was. And I used to visit the Narmada Valley, partly with the Narmada Bachao Andolan and so on. I'd gone to the Narmada Valley, actually to a place called Bilgaon, which is at where Gujarat, Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh come together, more or less in that part of India.
It's in North Maharashtra, near Nandurbar?
Northern Maharashtra, yeah, Nandurbar district, that area, near a town called Dhadgaon. So the Narmada flows just north of there, and in Bilgaon, there are two smaller rivers that come together in Bilgaon and then flow together into the Narmada. So when I went there were two young engineers from Kerala, from some small college, PSG Tech or some name like that, some college in Karnataka, in Kerala, who were there in Bilgaon, and they were 22 years old. This is their first assignment first thing they're doing out of college. They had come there and they decided to build a dam across the Narmada. What am I saying, Narmada? Across one of those rivers in Bilgaon. It's a small river, but they built a dam across. Then they blasted a channel through the hill next to it for the water to go, fed it into a turbine and a generator below that, and the rest as an engineer. The water was designed to run that turbine and the generator, and eventually on Republic Day in 2002 or 2003, I cannot remember exactly, they went there and they flipped a switch in that shed, and for the first time ever, this really, I'm saying this and it makes the hairs go up on the back of my head. The first time ever in Bilgaon, 300 people had electricity. And this was to me, it was a stunning achievement. To me, it was really the essence of patriotism. Here were these guys doing something for the betterment of ordinary Indians. What else is there? So I just was so taken by the story, so moved by these two guys that I wrote about it. Later, I even nominated them for a MIT, what they call a Technovators Prize. And I sent in the nomination, and 6 months later, somebody called me saying, they've won the prize, but we cannot locate them. They were trying to call, and then it turned out they were off on another microhydel project somewhere else, and it took another couple months or weeks to reach them, to tell them, hello, you've got this prize. So that's the kind of people they were. Very, very inspiring to me. But anyway, so I wrote that story up. Somebody, a good friend of mine called Rajni Bakshi, took the story at some point, unknown to me, took it to Ashutosh Gawarikar and said, would you like to consider this and some other stories for your next movie after Lagan? And he picked this particular story of the guys building a dam and providing electricity and so on. And he made this movie. And then about 2 months before it was released, this Rajni, my friend, comes to have dinner. And she says, I want to tell you, in a couple of months, this movie is going to be released, which is going to have your name on it as a credit. I said, that was the first I'd heard of it. So that was it. So it's really not my baby. I cannot claim any connection to Swadesh. It's just that, this story of mine inspired it in some ways. And I'm so glad it was made. It was an honest, nice attempt. I really think it was one of Shah Rukh Khan's best acted roles. I don't think he acts much in other films, but this one he actually acted. So I was glad to see that movie. Yeah. So that's my connection to Swades. It's not
Okay.
for what it's worth. Yeah.
And you were there, right, when this was happening, when they were blasting all the rocks and all that. You
Yeah.
met the engineers. You were there, right?
Right, I was there, and I love this one image that I have in my mind. This guy is sitting. One of these guys, he's in a veshti, the Kerala dhoti, and he's sitting there on the side of this hill. He's got one long stick, and he's got a rod, an iron rod, and he's got it into the rock like that, and he's hammering at it, and that's how he digs a hole into the rock. Then he takes some what looks like chilies to me, but were actually dynamite, and he puts it into that hole. He strings a long fuse out of it, and then he's smoking also. And when he's ready, he tells us all. There are like 50 of us looking at him, all the villagers and people like me looking at him. He says, "No, go up, move away from here." And he takes this cigarette out, he lights the fuse, and then he kind of ambles up the slope himself. And suddenly behind him, when he's halfway up the slope, there's this huge boom, and rocks go flying all over. And then he just turns around, goes back down there, looks at whether it's been done properly, picks up the rod, goes to the next place, starts doing the same thing again. And that's how they blasted that channel in the rock. Just a fantastic story. I've never had anything in my life that has been as moving as that, really.
Yeah. And in fact, I remember there was one scene where there was an old lady in a hut, and she had never seen light in her life. And suddenly the bulb lights up, and it's such an expressive and such an emotional moment at that time. I believe you were there at that time in the hut.
Well, there was a moment like that in when I was in Bilgaon, when there was this old woman, right, and I happened to be in a hut when the light came on. So, and just a little bit, one of the two engineers while I was there had to go home to Kerala. So we all went down to the water's edge to see him off in his boat, and this old woman came running down, and she had tears in her eyes. And I said, some of us asked her, "What's happened? Why are you crying?" She says, "No, I'm just so sad to see him going away. I'm afraid he won't come back." That's the kind of affection they had for these two guys, and that's true. So it was like that. And then later on, I happened to meet Ashutosh Gowarikar somewhere, and he took me aside and he says, "Just tell me, was this one scene in the movie, was it like you described in the article?" I said, "Yeah, it was." So,
okay. Right. Yeah, that was a very, very touching and moving scene. Yeah, very realistic also.
Yeah.
Okay, I now move on to your books that you've written. For the benefit of the audience, I've just he's written several books, Dilip, but I'm just mentioning a few of them.
I've got them here if you want me to show them. But
oh yeah, please do. Yeah, sure.
Okay, I'll just quickly. So this was my first book. It's called Branded by Law, and it's about denotified tribes. Then I wrote a book called The Narmada Dammed. There you are, where it talks about this Bilgaon story. So it's in there somewhere. Then I wrote a book called Roadrunner, which is about my travels around the US. And then I wrote a book called The Curious Case of Binayak Sen, which is about this man called Binayak Sen who was jailed in Chhattisgarh and accused of sedition and so on. It's an interesting case. And then I had a book, this one, called Final Test to the Exit Sachin. This is about Sachin Tendulkar's last cricket test. And I need to give you my claim to fame right here. Sachin Tendulkar is my neighbor. He lives right across the road from me.
Is it? I didn't know that.
Yeah, my hope is that, we tell people when they come to visit us, we live opposite Sachin Tendulkar. So I'm hoping one day we'll hear that he's telling people, please come to visit me. I live right opposite Dilip and Vibha. So anyway,
great.
And then I did for a children's book, a short profile of Dhyan Chand. And finally, this is my most recent book. It's called The Devliwalas. It's about the incarceration of Chinese Indians in a prison camp in 1962 after the Chinese War. And I wrote it, if you can see here, it's my co-author is a woman called Joy Ma, who was born in that prison camp. Anyway, so that's my books. Now you were going to ask me something about them.
Yeah, correct. No, I was telling the audience that each and every one of these books has been published by some of the world's best publishers. Penguin, for example, that Roadrunner is published by Harper Collins.
Yeah.
You have The Final Test, Exit Sachin Tendulkar, that is published by Random House.
Yeah.
And the most recent one, The Deoliwalas, is published by Pan Macmillan.
Yeah.
And I was just wondering, can you tell us a little bit about the most recent book of yours, The Dioliwala?
Nilay, this is a story that, so here's the thing. Okay, first of all, I'm going to bet that most of your audience has not heard that this happened, because it's true. I had not heard, and most Indians don't know, that in 1962, when we fought this war with China, we took 3,000 Chinese Indians, people of Chinese origin who live in India, had been in India for generations, working on tea plantations in Assam and so on. We took 3,000 of them and sent them in a train across the country for a week and put them in this prison camp in a place called Deoli in Rajasthan. And that's why it's called the Deoliwalas. So, and some of them lived there for up to 5 years. Now that war lasted only a month. And in fact, most of these people were actually put on the train after the war was over. That's the irony of it all. They were sent and they were, my co-author was not only born in the camp, she spent her first 4 years in the camp. So that's how long they spent in the camp. And then, they were released, but they went back home and they found that, their lives were, their shops or whatever they had were vandalized, destroyed, or taken over as the enemy property, and various different things. Some of them were put on ships and sent to China, which made no sense because they spoke no Chinese. That there was no reason for them to go to China. They spoke only Assamese and Hindi. They'd been here for generations. So for that, in 2012, 50 years after the war, I heard about this story from a Chinese Indian friend of mine, and I couldn't believe two things. I couldn't believe that it had happened, and I couldn't believe that I really think of myself as somewhat of an aware Indian, and I just could not believe I'd not heard of the story. So I did a long article at the time for a magazine called Caravan about this. And then I got known in the community. And so then a few years ago, Joy and I met and we decided to try and write this book together. So since she was from the camp, she knows a lot of the people, the survivors of the camp. And she did maybe 7 or 8, I can't remember, stories of people who were in the camp, oral histories, you might say, whereas I did the political, military, historical background for this story, and that's where this book has come from. Yeah, she lives in California, I should say.
Okay.
One small aspect of that is a lot of the people who, after they came back from the camp, they tried to go home and so on. Eventually, found that they felt betrayed and bewildered by India. Some of them just chose to leave and chose to emigrate, found ways to emigrate. So there's a big concentration of them in Toronto, as it happened, but also around the US. So Joy lives in California.
Okay. So if you see all these books, they're all, as I had mentioned right at the beginning of this talk, that they're all true stories. So, and a true story needs a lot of research to be done. So for, let's say, a student of journalism or somebody who's interested in writing, how should he go about doing this? And should he present an opinion or should he just present the facts as they are?
Well, for one thing, okay, let me answer that one by one. So yeah, I think you have to do your research. If you're writing nonfiction, you have to do your research. Whether that's primary research, you go to talk to people, or you do secondary research in papers, magazines, archives, whatever it is, interviews. So all that has to be done, and you need to be true to whatever you learn from all those things. I do think that it's any writer, any person on this earth has his own opinions, has his own biases, and I don't think that one should shy away from that. It's okay as long as you, as your readers, perceive that you've been honest. You've been honest to yourself. You've been honest to the facts. Then I think it's okay to have your own opinions, and they will come out in your writing. I mean, it's very hard not to put that into your writing. And I think if you're doing that, then you're almost dishonest. So personally, I see no problem with having your opinions come out. You might not actually have to say this is a horrible thing or this is a very good thing. Okay, but just in the way you write things, your opinions about them come out. I mean, I'm not going to be sitting here and telling you that I'm objective about what happened to these guys. I don't think I can be, because I think it was an awful thing that happened to these Chinese Indians, totally unjust, and I wish my book would express that. So I mean, I wanted to express that, and that's the reason I wrote the book. I've not written it to give you just the facts that this happened, that happened, and that's it. No, there is a reason I've written this book, and you need to know that reason.
Okay, I'd like to throw open for questions from the audience. Any questions from the audience? Observations, comments? Dilip is here. I suggest you raise your hand, and Mr. Panchal Dinesh will moderate.
Okay.
Dinesh, can you please announce about raising the hand?
Yeah, friends, those who want to ask any questions or any comments, they can raise their hand. The raise hand option is available in the participant list on the right hand side bottom.
So it's not just raising hands like this. Okay. I see somebody trying to raise their hand.
Yeah, a lot of people. Salma, Mr. Basu.
Yeah, Salma ma'am, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir. I am faculty from Navrachana University from Mathematics Department.
Okay.
So I want to ask about what you wrote in mathematics, so that we have also some idea about.
What is my what in mathematics? I didn't catch that.
Actually, you said you wrote earlier.
Yes.
You were writing in some mathematics article
Yeah,
on mathematics.
yeah.
So I want to know about what exactly you were writing. So
Oh, okay. So, I'll tell you, madam, the reason I started writing that is because I got asked to write it. But apart from that, the reason it interests me is because at that time I started, my son was in his last years of school. And, he's a bright guy. He's not here, so I can say it. He's a very bright guy, but he was, he had such horrible mathematics teachers that he was frightened of numbers, and for no reason, So when it was coming up to 10th standard, I would sit with him and we would work, and he would say, we've been given this formula for this one thing, and we're told don't ask any questions. I said, okay, now you're here with me. Let's work out why this formula works. And then when we'd work it out, it would be like a light went off in his eye, and he'd say, okay, finally I know this. And I said, okay, now that you know it, you will never forget it, because even if you do forget it, you can work it out. And he did wonderfully in his exam in mathematics. So I was grateful for that. So my whole reason, the reason I'm telling you this is that it just bothers me that people say they say almost proudly, I can't stand numbers, or I don't like numbers. I mean, nobody says I don't like words, I don't like letters. But they'll say that about numbers. Why?
yes.
So I wanted to try and write about mathematics in a way that people would say, okay, there's something interesting here. Maybe it's challenging, but it's still interesting and fun to try and find out about it. So I've written about a whole lot of different things. I like to write about pure mathematics that I hear about, or interesting things in mathematics. But I also like to write about astronomy. But I've also written about sometimes, for example, bees. When they go back to their hives, they waggle their bodies in a certain way, and there's a certain mathematics involved there about why they do that and what are they communicating to their fellow bees. So there's all kinds of, once you start looking into it, there's all kinds of interesting things that you could write about. I've never had a problem writing that column. I've written about 250 of them so far. It's always a pleasure. It's always interesting to find out something, and I'm hoping that I communicate some of that fun and that excitement and that challenge to my readers. Because if I can do that to a few readers and who leave my column thinking, okay, there's something interesting about this mathematics, I'm not scared anymore, that's my job done. So that's what I want to do in mathematics.
Yes, thank you so much, sir.
Okay.
Basu sir, you can ask your question.
Yeah. First of all, thank you.
Thank you for listening. I can't hear anyone.
Mr. Basu, we can't hear you.
Have we lost him?
I think.
Mr. Basu? Mr. Basu?
Okay, let's.
Dhaval sir, meanwhile,
Dhaval, yeah. He's muted, yeah. Basu is muted.
Dhaval sir?
Yes, sir. Good morning, sir.
Good morning, Dhaval.
Yes, sir. My question is related with the computer field, and my question is that in computer field, many algorithms are inspired from human, or they are mimicking the human behavior. So
Human behavior.
Human behavior, yeah.
Okay.
So does this type of algorithm help you to writing something innovative?
What do you mean by inspired by human behavior? In a
Like,
sense, yeah, go ahead.
I am talking about that swarm technology is there. Another one is that computer vision, machine learning.
Yeah.
So this type of, yeah.
I mean, it's the whole area of artificial intelligence, which I was sort of on the periphery of when I was working, is I mean, is of interest, has been of interest to computer scientists for a very long time. Because as soon as computers started getting reasonably powerful, computer scientists started asking, can we get computers to mimic human behavior in different ways? And if that happens, maybe they can take over some human tasks, whatever, even ordinary tasks, but maybe not so ordinary tasks. So that's been happening for years. And I think you're right. Many things have come out of that. The computers can now read text, or they can, speechifying stuff, or like you said, computer vision, machine intelligence. All these are different aspects of the artificial intelligence that people have been working on for so many years. I think in that sense, almost any of these, any human behavior, at some point, there will be a computer scientist who says, well, I want to try and see if my computer can imitate this, or can replicate this kind of behavior. It has to come from there, if you ask me, because I mean, how else would we know about some of these behaviors and these techniques if they've not come out of human behavior? That's where it comes from.
Yes, sir. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Basu, I think, are you there? Please unmute yourself first.
Okay. Can you hear me?
Yeah, now we can.
Okay. Dilip, first of all, it's a wonderful discussion till now. A lot of learning for me. I have a very personal question. During my last 5 years of my work in my organization, the Larsen & Toubro, I was one of the responsibility was corporate communication. So these 5 years, over a period of 5 years, I developed a passion for writing, or writing some pieces. Many times it is ghost writing for the senior people.
Okay.
And some of the things for business magazine I have written, and particularly infrastructure magazines I have written. But while writing, I could find out that there are a lot of things outside this. That is a lot of things which are from social science, maybe next door neighbor, there are some issues, or maybe in my own house also, there are interesting stories. Mm-hmm. So I wanted to know, although there is no formula I know, apart from my passion and little bit my, whatever I can say for my ability to write little bit. So beyond that, what are the things you feel I need to be very careful to become a somewhat successful writer in not only just technical field, but in social science field, in any storytelling field, this kind of thing? I just wanted to have your suggestions.
So you want a formula from me, Mr. Basu?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, occasionally I get asked something like that, and it may not sound like much, but I feel like the right answer is, and it has helped me, is just to write. Just write. It not necessarily, some people say you must write something every day. Yes, I think that's a good thing, but I'm not that disciplined, But just write all the time, write stuff, whether it's for blogs, write a diary. I think what did help me a lot in my writing is for many years, I kept up a blog, writing in it like 2, 3, 4 times a day. I don't do it anymore, but I think that those maybe 7 or 8 years that I did it, when I go back and look at some of what I wrote, then I'm astonished at the breadth of the things that I tried to write about. And I wasn't thinking of it as a breadth of things at the time, but now I look back and it's so many different things, and it helped in my thinking, but it also helped sharpen my writing. So there is, to get better at writing, there is no shortcut there's no other technique except for just writing. So I would say, if you want people to read you, just start with a blog. People, you show it to people that get them to give you honest feedback, and then they will eventually tell other people, and it'll go on like that. You'd be surprised at how many people start reading something like that. So please try that.
Okay. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Okay. Amol sir. Amol sir.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Dilip sir. I'm
afternoon.
Dr. Amol Randive, Associate Professor for Consumer Behavior and E-Commerce with Navrachana University.
Okay, good to meet you.
Sir, I have a question. I learned that you were on the editorial board and affiliated to the Consumer Guidance Society of India,
Yeah.
which deals with adulterated foods and profiteering and exorbitant pricing and all these things. So I just wanted to know your take, your opinion on all such practices happening in the post-COVID era. Since because there is going to be a kind of mechanism or probably a way which traders would sort to for making up for the losses that they have incurred during this. There is all the chances of these kind of black marketing or these kind of malicious practices being done by these. So what is your take on what's going to happen in this domain in the post-COVID era?
Okay, let me first say that it was a very long time ago that I was part of the Consumer Guidance Society. It was in the early 90s, and there was the people who asked me to be on that board have now been actually there's some kind of split in that body, and they've been thrown out, and so I don't know much about what's happening in Consumer Guidance Society. Very important. And you're right. In this post-COVID time, there are probably going to be people looking for ways to make their profits again in some and maybe underhanded ways.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I think this is something that this COVID time has been such a downtime for the economy that I really don't know how we're going to come out. I'm afraid for what the situation is going to be like, not just health-wise, but to the economy once we start emerging out of this lockdown. So there will be people, trying to make a fast buck. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, true.
The only thing I can say is that we as consumers need to be just as vigilant and perhaps even more to make sure that that people don't get away with this. But what I mean is to expect that these kind of things are going to happen. It's not that we expect dishonesty from everyone, but just to be on our guard, to be sure that these things don't happen and that they're stopped whenever they can. But it's going to be a hard time, and there are a lot of people who are in desperate straits right now. I met, for example, the guy who cuts my hair every 2 or 3 months. This morning when I was out on my walk, and he's just, there's no way to describe the kind of state he is in, because for 3 months he's had no business. What is a guy like that going to come out and do when COVID is gone?
Right, sir. Yeah.
I don't. At some level, I feel we've got to have sympathy for some of these small business guys. Yes, some of them are going to resort to underhand practices, but they're so desperate that we have to find some ways to give them a cushion.
True.
I don't know if that answers your question, but I think that's important.
Yeah. Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Giri Sharma sir, you can ask your question, please.
Yeah. Sir, good morning. This is Giri, and I take care of placements and training at the university.
Okay, good to meet you, sir.
I have come here with an industry experience of about 25 years. And I'm proud to share with you that I have also taken to writing 5 years back.
Okay, good to hear that.
I've done my MBA and then spent about 2.5 decades in various service industries and then the media and multiplex industry. Now, we just discussed a point about broad spectrum writing. You are looking back and seeing what kind of characters you have written or what kind of various topics you have written. I am more into fiction writing.
Okay.
And I would like to ask you a question related to some characters or some anecdotes you would have written where you would not have been a first-hand audience to the occurring, like what you were in this Bilgaon thing.
Yeah.
What did it feel as a writer to write something where you were, of which you were not a part of, sir?
Well, as a non-fiction writer, then you try to find as many sources as you can. I'm talking not just from my own experience, but from reading how other people have approached the same idea.
Okay.
You try to find as many sources you can who corroborate the way the events happened, and then you try to build a coherent but believable, sincere narrative from that. So it's important to have those different perspectives, so you know that you are being true to that story to the extent that you can. Because let's admit, let's be frank, you were not there. So
Yes.
you have to at some point acknowledge that. And I think it's also important to acknowledge somewhere if you're writing a book, let's say somewhere, say I was not at this particular meeting or I was not at this particular event, but I've tried to reconstruct it from all these different sources. Maybe name the sources, but make it clear that it's not a first person account.
Sir, but thankfully a fiction writer can get away with this, no? Because he is writing fiction.
The fiction writer can get away with anything, you know. I mean, it's everything is his imagination, and that's the great thing about fiction writing. You make up the story, and but I still think you need to be believable to the circumstances. You know, if you're writing about, let's say, you know, the slums in Bombay, but you mentioned something that you would never find in the slums, then you know one of your readers is going to read it and say, hello, this doesn't ring true.
Exactly. One needs to relate, and one needs to be authentic to himself more than anything else.
Right. So therefore that requires some research too. If you were, for example, if you were writing about the slums, maybe you should go and spend some time in the slum and get a sense of how it feels to be in there, you know, and then write about it, even if it's fiction. So,
exactly.
Your readers are will be your fiercest critics and the most willing to find out things that you've done wrong. So, you know, you should be aware of that. That's all.
I'm happy to have this answer from you, sir, and I'm happy to note that I'm on the right track, because I have published one book in the year 2017, which was a reunion about 4 friends who were in school.
Okay.
The second was an ebook which talks about an elder brother with a past.
Okay.
Which his younger siblings do not know.
Okay. Good to
and
know.
The third one was about a murder mystery. Now this was totally different from my first 2 works.
Okay.
And I was doing some research because I wanted a country who could give a license to use a gun within 30 days of learning.
Okay.
So I did research and found out that in the US you could get a license within 30 to 45 days.
Okay.
Therefore, I directed one of the characters to go to that country and not to any other country, just to lend an authenticity element.
Okay, good for you.
Sir, can I request Mr. Dinesh Panchal to on my video? I just wanted to show a small picture of mine with the hero of Swades and a book of mine also to Mr. Dilip D'Souza.
You can go ahead and share, sir.
I'm unable to on the video here. That is the whole issue. No issues, no problem.
I think you have to click on, there's a
I clicked that.
Share video or something like that on the bottom left.
Yeah, but then it is not clicking. Anyway, sir, thank you very much for answering my question. Thank you, sir.
Okay, you're welcome.
Bye.
All right.
Pallavi ma'am, you can go ahead and ask your question.
Okay. Hello, sir.
Hi, how are you?
I'm fine. I also work with Navrachana University and I'm a physics faculty.
Okay.
So we are talking about creative writing. I have a question that is it really impossible to have rigorous scientific contents and creative writing without changing the meaning of the scientific contents in same book? The problem is because we have to refer many books for teaching. So there are few books written by like legendary Penman lecture series.
Okay.
So, but not many books are available where you get a lot of description about a concept. At the same time, there is no cutting of the rigorosity. So if we pick up a book, one book will be very good in rigorosity, but then they expect the author to know everything, no word shortage. And some books will be only verbose. So is it really difficult from author's point of view to write a scientific book which has a good mix of both?
Well, So this is something well, as a column writer for this kind of for mathematics and all, this is something I face all the time. You know, I'm trying to explain a concept that may be a little hard even for me, but I want to explain it to my readers in some way that they find it interesting. So I don't think it's part of the job. Let me put it that way. I think it is part of your job as a writer, if you want to get these ideas out, to describe them in some way that is accessible to people. Yeah, of course, there are people who find that difficult, but you know, there are enough guys who are able to express some of these ideas in ways that even an ordinary reader would be able to understand. Feynman is one. You know, there's a guy called E.O. Wilson who writes books about ants. He was a what is the word for an ant? Anyway, he's an ant biologist. So he's a guy who writes like that. There is Douglas Hofstadter, who's written in interesting ways, explored different ideas. I mean, there are many people who write in ways that are engaging. So I don't think it's you have to just find those books and then find ways to use them in your
classes.
Classes. Yeah. There's no shortage of them. You know, if at some point we can, you send me some email or something, I'll send you some of the books that I found interesting.
Sure. Thank you very much.
Okay.
Tejal ma'am.
Yeah. Thank you, Dinesh. That was a wonderful talk, Dilip, and
Thank you,
very good interaction with Professor Yagnik. You know, yes, your passion has carried you through many different roles and stages in your life, and in each one you have excelled. Yeah, which is very commendable.
Okay,
what would you tell young people who also want to make your kind of movement? You know, and how should they go about it? And how much is passion and how much is hard work?
Tejal, there's an easy answer to that. Follow your passion. You know, a lot of people will tell you that you got to follow your passion. It's true, but what is your passion? One doesn't always know. But I think one important aspect of learning and education is to find out what is interesting to you, what do you like to do, and then to realize that following that, doing that is something that you can do for a living. You know, when I was a kid, I enjoyed writing. But in school, I used to do well at my essays and all, but it never struck me till years and years later that I could actually do it I could do it for a career. It never struck me. I don't know why it didn't strike me. In retrospect, I'm glad it didn't strike me because I'm glad for my computer science background, right? But the point I'm trying to make is that it never struck me. So it's important to find out what you like to do, and sometimes maybe that can take you till the time you're 25, 30. It may not happen to you when you're 15 and 16 years old. That's okay, but it should. At some point, we all need to find out what we like to do with our time, and then you find out, is there a way to turn that into a career? And you know, that's the way it goes. I'm now, right now, at this point in my life, during this lockdown, I'm actually teaching myself to play. Here, let me just show you. Harmonica, you know, I mean, and my inspiration is actually a guy like me and like Dr. Yajnik, a young techie who went from some college, I think VJTI or something here in Bombay, and he went off to the US to do computer science, but then he decided to become a blues harmonica player. And he's followed that passion, and you'll find him all over the web. He does Bollywood songs, but he also does blues songs. He does Bollywood in a blues style. A guy called Aki Kumar, and you know, he's a guy who's found his passion, and he must be maybe 35 years old now, and he's doing it, and he's enjoying it. You know, that's the kind of that's what I mean by you need to find out what you like to do, and I'm deliberately using that rather than passion, because maybe sometimes you don't have that passion till later, but you know that you enjoy doing this, and then follow that. You know.
Yes, that is, you know, we have to teach our students to do some amount of self-reflection, which is something that is lacking. We don't allow ourselves to think what actually drives us, what actually makes us happy, what we enjoy, and all of that.
What we
Dilip,
enjoy, really. Yeah.
would I be misplaced? Would it be misplaced if I were to ask you to share something about your struggles, your dilemmas when you started something new? Did you have to work hard at drawing some not inspiration, it was already there, but some amount of training or some amount of skill building which you did internally yourself? Can you throw some light on that aspect? It seems very easy when you look at your life, but has it been so easy?
Well, I should have learned. I was saying this right at the beginning, and Dr. Yasnik kind of laughed it off, but it's really true. I struggled in Pilani with my discipline, my engineering discipline, and maybe that should have been a lesson that I shouldn't have been doing electrical engineering. But I remember those days as a great struggle, and when I started writing, it was more, in a sense, natural to me, but I was always conscious that it's not going to come to me on a platter. Nobody's going to give me a column or let me write books just because I feel like I enjoy writing. I have to somehow prove myself, and that's part of the game. I mean, it's something that I need to accept if I want to make this as my career. And it was, as a freelancer, as an independent writer, it was not always easy to get published. You have to chase. By now, I guess, I'm sort of known in some circles. I know some editors, so I can write to an editor and say, I want to write about this, and he will say yes because he's seen my work. But that's because I've paid my dues for a while, and I think that's important. We all need to know you have to pay your dues. You start writing, you enjoy writing, it doesn't mean you're going to get published. And there is a certain amount of hard work and all, and if you're not up for that, look for another job, and power to you in doing that other job. But in any job you do, in any work you do, any career you take up, any passion, there is a certain amount of hard work that is involved. And if it is passionate, if it is something that you enjoy doing, you will enjoy doing that hard work. I enjoy writing that's all I can answer to that. So,
thank you.
My wife just brought in this to tell me this. The name of the biologist is Edward O. Wilson, who's an ant biologist. There you are. That's what wives are good for. Well, I'm sorry, I shouldn't say that. That's what my wife has been very kind to bring that in and tell me, because I didn't get the name quite right. Okay, anyway.
Thank you. We have one more question. Anyone?
Mr. Rajesh Jain, you can go and ask your question. Mr. Rajesh Jain?
Yeah. Actually, my question was this only, that what made you to, leave that...
Rajesh, 1 second.
Yeah.
By the way, for the benefit of Dilip and everybody here, Rajesh Jain is a professor of operations and quantitative at Nirma University.
Okay.
Very good friend of mine, and so I just thought I'll introduce you.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thanks, Professor Nilay, about my introduction. So I just wanted to know, although in some way Mr. Dilip has already answered, because some people have already asked a question, that at which point of time you come to know that there is a writer hidden in you, right? That is one question. And what made you to leave your IT field and follow this writing part? So that's my question.
I was working in the States in software, and I'm thoroughly enjoying myself. I don't want to ever say that I didn't enjoy doing software. It was something that I enjoyed doing. But there was a friend of mine, a guy who came over one day, and he said, I see you're doing all this stuff and all, but where's the passion? And that's something that stayed with me, and it just made me start thinking about myself at that point. Maybe at some point, maybe you call it a midlife crisis or something like that. I'm not sure I would call it a crisis in my case, but it started me thinking, what am I doing? And am I really doing what I want to do? Even if I like this, is it what I really want to do? So then when I came back to India in 1992, I was, part of the time I was looking for a job until I found a job. But I thought, while I'm looking, why don't I just try this thing that I never tried before? And I tried writing. I took it a little seriously and tried to write something that I would like to get published. And then I just realized after a little while that I really like doing this. I like doing the research. I like crafting something out of the research. I like all those things. And I like applying all the computer science thoughts that were in my head to this writing. So was that a writer hidden inside me? I don't know how to answer that. Maybe he was and he just jumped out, or maybe it just happened one day. I don't know, but it certainly was something that I found I enjoyed doing. And I think that's where it came from. It wasn't always easy. I had an argument, I remember a serious argument with my parents at one point, because they said, you spent 10 years doing this software, you were in, you went to BITS Pilani, you did engineering and all, so what was it all for? And now you're talking about going to writing. And I had to persuade them that, look, you guys have taught me to follow the things I want to do. So now I'm trying to do that, you better support me. So I mean, and now of course my mother is happy that I'm doing what I'm doing. She was a writer herself too. So, but you have to cross those hurdles, and I'm up for that. It's okay. I enjoy doing this, and I enjoy writing. So there you are. Again, I'm not sure that answers your question, Rajesh, but that's where it comes from.
Yeah. Zil Patel, you can ask your question, please.
Yeah. Good morning, sir.
Hi. Is your name Zil, really? That's a lovely name.
Zil. Okay. Yeah, thank you, sir. Sir, I'm from first year BCA. I'm pursuing the BCA from Navrachana. So I have a question that there are many controversial books written on case study, like any judge or the judgment passed. So they got banned after a certain period after they got published. So is there any political pressure that they got banned, or any other reasons regarding?
You mean books that got banned? Is that what you're talking about?
Yes, sir.
So, I mean, who banned them? Like governments banned them?
Government bans them, yeah.
Yeah, well, of course there's political pressure. There are books that are written that people don't like. They take issues that the governments don't like. So some governments will resort to things like banning. Sure.
We have a book on a Judge Damodar, that case that he was murdered just before he was going to convict. So there were certain issues that the book was gonna ban, because their family member also raised their voice against that the judge was murdered. Okay. But they declared them as he did suicide. So okay. So it was a political pressure that the book was banned, or
okay. Are you asking me?
Yeah, I'm asking you.
Well, I mean, I don't know this book, this Justice Damodar. I don't know who you're talking about, but yeah, I mean, certainly, there's every book that is banned has got a reason that it's banned. It's stepped on some toes, and those are usually political toes, and instead of addressing some of the issues that this book raises, people would prefer to ban it and try to. That way, it's the oldest lesson in the world. When you ban something, it's going to be it's going to be read even more. It's a crazy thing, but those guys don't realize that. So they try to ban it, and then it doesn't serve their purpose, because the issue gets discussed even more. So I think, first of all, I think banning is stupid, but certainly banning is political. It is going to be done by people in politics who don't like those things that are being published. Yeah.
Okay, so thank you.
Okay. Yeah. Hitarth, you have a question?
Yeah, sir. Dilip sir, so nice to hear you. I'm actually seeing the mirror effect. Really enjoying the entire conversation. I have a couple of specific questions. Number one, there are students who are not from arts background. Now, this is very typical mindset at least in Gujarat, I know, that those who are into journalism, they are mainly from non-science subjects, right?
Okay.
They do their, those who are very good in mathematics and science and English, they chose to become engineers and doctors and whatever. And the remaining lot out of those students, we get, some of them try to come into journalism. So my question is, how do, there's a dearth of science journalists in India, actually. Very few of journalists are into specific journalism. It's a niche, area where someone really excels. So how do we, actually encourage the students who are having science background? Because, their requirement in journalism is very high. Unless we don't have scientific journalists, the reporting quality, whatever platform we take, we compromise on that if we don't have the scientific journalists. So how do we cope up with that situation?
No, I really think you're right, because I think it's not just journalists, but it's not just science journalists, but even ordinary journalists don't have a good grasp of mathematics, statistics, and then they're dealing with these things. Government will put out some figures and they will just report them and they make no sense. They need somebody to analyze them in a certain way, or at least to show that this is what they mean, rather than some other interpretation that is given. So there is a need for that. I think one thing that really that more papers should do and more professors should do, or journalism schools should have a certain aspect of their course to teach, mathematics and statistics to aspiring journalists. But I also think you're right. I think it would be good to attract science students into this field. And, the only way I can see for that to happen is for more papers and publications and channels and all to have a regular science, a column or a page, whatever you want to, some aspect of their publication that is about science, and to celebrate that science, to show that it's necessary, it's useful, whatever, and then that will attract people who've gone to, like me, who went to BITS Pilani, say, okay, engineering I did, but journalism with this background is a career option. I think there is place for that. And I think with the explosion in journalism now, of course, with COVID, who knows what's happening, but in general, there is this explosion of online, channels and publications and all. There is certainly a place for science-based journalism. I hope that somebody tries to exploit that. Yeah.
So second question is, there is also dearth of journalists itself, because since we deal with journalism students, I also know students in M.S. University also, and also in other universities from Gujarat. So there is a serious dearth of journalists who are, willing to come into full-fledged journalism. Most of them would want to go into corporate communications or public relations or different sorts of a journalism. So how do we also look at this critical aspect where, there will be a day when you don't have a trained journalist, and at one point of time we don't have students who would like to pursue their career into journalism, and at the same time we have an army of journalists who have no knowledge about journalism. I know a lot of journalists who really don't have any knowledge about journalism itself, but since they have cameras, since they have their mobile with them, and they have a social media page, they become journalists. So it's a clashing situation. How do you look at the future, and what could be the outcome?
Well, with social media and everybody having cameras and all that, it is changing this whole discipline. You're right. Everybody thinks they're a citizen journalist, and they're not really, because there are certain guidelines or certain ethics that you have to follow, all that. And I think that's important. Certain amount of research you have to do, because journalism does teach you. How do we solve that? I don't know. I think, again, it's up to journalism schools to tackle this head on, to say that, here is this new reality. How do we teach journalism in this new age? Because it's not just now, we cannot just teach people to write like we did before. Now there is this whole new way of doing journalism. How do we teach them these principles? The same principles apply, but how do we teach them these principles in this new age? And I think not enough. Yeah.
Sorry to interrupt you. And the students are very smart. They also read about the current situation of journalism, journalists in field. A lot of jobs have been lost, in journalism itself. From Times of India, there are salary cuts. So they are smart. So they evaluate these professions very carefully. So it's a very tricky situation.
It is, and again, it's up to journalism schools to address that. I feel it's not that it's not happened before. You know, there was a time when journalism was print journalism, then TV came along. So what happened? What happened to then? You have to train TV journalists now. Then as you talk about corporate communications and PR and all, people have gone into that now. So now with this whole Twitter and everybody has a phone camera and all, how do you teach journalism in this new age? And I honestly think not enough thought has gone into it from people who practice journalism. So, but maybe it will happen. I think these things always take a little time, and there's a transition period, and I think it will happen.
True, sir. Thank you so much.
Okay.
Okay, I think we don't have any more questions, and so on behalf of Navrachana University, I wish to thank Dilip, Mr. Dilip D'Souza, for a wonderful session. It's almost 1.5 hours that he's
been right? Oh boy, yeah, you're right. Yeah, okay.
We just didn't know how time flew,
Okay.
So I thank you so much for addressing all of us. And, this whole thing is available on YouTube also, recorded version. We're curating all these YouTube things, and then we'll upload it. So students and general public who may be interested in viewing can view it later. When Navrachana University, when this lockdown stops, when things get back to normal, I'd like to invite you on behalf of the university. Please come to our university in Vadodara, be our guest, and talk to our students, faculty. It'll be wonderful to hear you.
Okay, I would love to do that. I'll come wearing my mask.
Yeah, that's the new normal now.
I will come wearing. Okay.
Thanks a lot to you, and thanks also to Mrs. D'Souza. I know she's there and she's helping you in this whole session. So thank you so much, ma'am.
All right. Okay. Thanks a lot. I really enjoyed it. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
Bye-bye.
Dilip.
Okay.
Bye.
Bye.